So next we move on to non-battle exclusive, meaning every Pokemon from now on in this category are Pokemon that can change their form outside of battle. And like I mentioned, we have a bunch of different methods for changing these forms. First, we have the most unique of them all, Burmy, which changes its form based on the general overworld location of the battle. Of course, these forms have nothing to do with Burmy's typing or stat. They're all pure bug type. They do not gain grass, ground, or steel type until they evolve, meaning most people get these confused. Many people forget this and think that Burmy is already bug grass, bug ground, and bug steel, but they're not. Only Wormadam is. Next, we get to Overworld Interaction. This is unique because the only way to change the forms of these Pokemon is with interacting with a specific place in the overworld which the game provides. A very notable example is Deoxys. Deoxys has 4 forms, and in every generation except Gen 3, every game has Meteorites somewhere. The only exception, of course, was Gen 3, where every single game, being Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, and I think Ruby and Sapphire, each have their own specific form, and you cannot change them without trading the Pokemon. But that was back then. That was a long time ago. It doesn't matter. And of course, their 4 forms are Normal, Attack, Defense, and Speed. The next Overworld Interaction, which is pretty well known, is Rotom. Rotom can change its form based on Overworld Interaction with appliances. But of course, they included the appliances in Heart Gold and Soul Silver in every game since then, and you can find them in places like Silphco, a shopping mall, or most notably in Gen 6 and 7, the Professor's Lab, if I remember correctly. And of course, he has 6 forms, 5 of which are appliances. The 5 appliances have identical stats, with regular Rotom being weaker in all stats except it's faster. So speed is normal Rotom's only advantage. They all have different types. They all learn a special move like Overheat, Hydro Pump, Air Slash, Leaf Storm, Blizzard, whatever. And of course, what everyone hates is how Fan Rotom still has the same ability as the rest, being Levitate, even though it's a flying type. And I hate how on Pokemon Showdown, they always give it inside like the game, which I can't change when I'm playing random battles, an air balloon. Like, why does it need an air balloon if it's a flying type and it has Levitate? That's just offensive to me. But maybe we'll never know. The next Overworld Interaction form change is Furfrou, where you can change Furfrou into one of 9 other forms, giving 10 total with its natural form. And you can change this at a Stylist, which can be found in X and Y, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, ever since it was introduced. If you find a Stylist or 2 somewhere, usually in a place that specializes in trimming and haircuts. And finally, if I am not mistaken, this is the last Overworld Interaction. It's Cosplay Pikachu. Unfortunately, this Pokemon only exists in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. It doesn't exist any other game at all, not even X and Y. It is oRaS only. Of course, if you go to a contest hall, you'll find the contest stylist in the changing room, where they will change a Cosplay Pikachu into any of its costumed forms, whether it be Rockstar, Belle, Popstar, PhD, or Libre. And each of them get a special move that Pikachu normally cannot learn: Meteor Mash, Icicle Crash, Draining Kiss, Electric Terrain, and Flying Press. Now, these Pokemon are very interesting, and unfortunately they don't exist anymore. And none of them can change into a regular Pikachu. They are all stuck as female. They cannot evolve. They cannot be put into Pokemon Bank. They cannot be traded to any game other than Omega Ruby or Alpha Sapphire between them. Next, we have abilities. There are probably only 2 Pokemon that can change form outside of battle using an ability, and that first one is Arceus, using Multi-Type. Of course, the trigger also includes a held item, but since it depends on its ability first and foremost, even though it can't be changed, the ability is what technically triggers the form change, not just the hide item, so I consider the ability to be primary. The ability Multi-Type, using a held plate or Z-Crystal, as introduced in Gen 7, allows Arceus to change into one of 18 forms, each of them a different type, suitable to be a multifaceted creator of the universe. Of course, the only other Pokemon with a non-battle exclusive ability form change is Silvally. Silvally, based on Arceus himself, has the RKS system ability, which in every other language it's called Alpha system instead of RKS system, because Alpha refers to the Alpha Pokemon Arceus, with Arceus being more of a pun, but I still like it. Of course, it requires the held item of a memory, meaning it gains no advantage like Arceus does from the power of a Z Crystal or a Plate, because Plate boosts the type's power, and Z Crystal lets you use a Z move, but unfortunately, Silvally cannot change its type with a memory and hold a Z Crystal. It's one or the other, which is sad. Next category of non-battle exclusive form change is held items. Giratina, for example, can change its form if it holds the Griseous Orb. Of course, its form also changes depending on what world it's in, but the Distortion world is only accessible in Platinum, I believe, so there's no point in mentioning it until a remake comes out. We hope for that remake someday. The next held item form change is Genesect. It has 4 other forms other than its normal form, that being Shock Drive, Burn Drive, Chill Drive, and Douse Drive respectively. It doesn't affect the Pokemon directly, but it does change the form of its move. So this is one of those unique, useless abilities, being like, okay, so the item changes the type of the move. So it's sort of like Judgment. The Pokemon itself doesn't change type, doesn't change anything. The drives only change its Technoblast, so that's that. The next category is key items. Key items are items that are not capable of being sold or thrown away or bought. I mean, usually they're obtainable to be put in the key item pockets, everyone knows. And most Pokemon that can be changed with the key item are legendary Pokemon. So first of all, Shaymin, when used with a Gracidea flower, it can change form from land form to sky form. This is the exception I mentioned. Usually you can only change its form using the Gracidea outside of battle, meaning you just use the Gracidea on land form, it turns into sky form. But it can turn back into land form in battle if you freeze it. Little known fact. So if you freeze Shaymin and it survives somehow, even though it's a grass and flying type, if it survives, it'll turn back into land form. It'll also turn back into land form if you take it out of a PC box. In previous generations, it changed the moment you put it into the PC box, but in Gen 7 they changed it so that it changes once you remove it from the PC box. So if you leave it in there eternally, it'll stay as sky form, I think. So it's the exception because it can technically change back in battle, but it can only change into sky form outside of battle. The next key item form change is Tornadus, Thundurus, and Landorus. These 3 can each change form with the same item, the Reveal Glass. And of course, their original incarnate forms introduced in Black and White gained additional Therian forms in Black 2, White 2. With their Therian forms gaining, I think, new moves, new abilities. I'm not sure exactly the details. And of course, they are much stronger, in my opinion, if I'm not mistaken, in their stats, stat-wise, of course. The next key item form change is Kyurem. Using a DNA Splicers and a Reshiram or Zekrom, you can fuse them with Kyurem and create either white Kyurem or black Kyurem. Hoopa can change form using the key item Prison Bottle. When a Prison Bottle is used on Confined Hoopa, it turns into Hoopa Unbound, which of course will change back into Confined Hoopa after 3 days or once removed from a PC box. The next key item form change is the Zygarde I mentioned earlier, not relating to the 100% form, but if a Zygarde with Power Construct, which is required because an Aura Break Zygarde cannot change forms. If it has Power Construct, then the Zygarde Cube can automatically change it between its 10% and its 50% forms. Of course, both of which can turn into 100% if it has all of its cells, and if it loses HP in battle, but that's not relevant to this category. And of course, you can only change a 10% into a 50% if you have enough cells. And finally, Necrozma, using the key item N-Solarizer or N-Lunarizer, combined with either Solgaleo or Lunala. This sounds familiar. Haven't we discussed this before? Oh yeah, it's just like Kyurem and Black Kyurem and White Kyurem, whatever. A regular Necrozma can be turned into Dawnwings Necrozma or Duskmane Necrozma, using those key items or those legendaries, I mean, a combination of one or the other, depending on the game. The next category is another unique Pokemon, which is the only Pokemon that changes form using a used item. Like, that's an item that is not a key item, but it's still used on the Pokemon. So it's technically like the key item, but Nectar is not a key item. It's a regular item. You can collect as many of them as you want, and depending on if it's red Nectar, yellow Nectar, pink Nectar, or purple Nectar, you can change the style of the Oricorio into Bale, Pom Pom, Pow, or Sensu, which changes the type of its move, Revelation Dance, which again sounds familiar, just like Silvally, just like Genesect, just like Arceus, except it doesn't have to hold the item. It can hold anything else. It has to have the item used on it. And of course it changes its own typing between Fire, Electric, Psychic, and Ghost. And of course this method of changing a Pokemon's form is unique to Oricorio. Next we return to Deerling and Sawsbuck, Gen 5 only. It was actually changeable. January was spring, February was summer, March was autumn, April was winter. Most of you probably know this if you've played Gen 5 games, and so on and so forth. So technically a year inside the game repeats about 3 times in an actual real-life year based on the month. Of course that's not possible anymore, which means any Deerling or Sawsbuck transferred to Gen 6 from Gen 5 will keep its form, and any Pokemon bred from it will be the same form, and you will never be able to change it, which is a shame. Of course, this category is also unique. Keldeo can change its form based on knowing a move, not using a move like Meloetta, and not having an item like any of the others, or not even an ability. It has to know the move Secret Sword. As long as it knows the move Secret Sword, it never even has to use it, it can change from its regular form into its Resolute form. And as soon as it forgets Secret Sword for any reason, it loses its Resolute form and goes back to regular form. Xerneas is technically in the other category since we are approaching the end of the video, but for some reason the Pokedex lists it as a separate form, even though it makes no sense. Between a active Xerneas, the one on the right, and a non-active Xerneas, the one on the left, the only difference is that Xerneas is always active in battle, and it's always blue and non-active outside of battle, like in its Pokeball or even in its Pokedex, you know? The only difference is that it looks different, so it's purely aesthetic, and the only change is when it's outside or in battle. So technically, I don't consider this an official form, but I'm including it because the Pokedex, or at least at some point the Pokedex, listed it as official, but I don't think so. The other forms, which are semi-official, but technically I wouldn't count them as official, are Reshiram, Zekrom, and Black and White Kyurem in Overdrive. Now, Reshiram and Zekrom are in Overdrive whenever they use their signature move, so I'd hardly call that a form change. It's just a battle animation. So if it's just a battle animation, don't even bother. Black and White Kyurem, of course, are always in Overdrive form as long as they're in battle, so that's not even an animation, that's just how they always look, so what's the point? It's just like Xerneas. These shouldn't count. Solgaleo and Lunala also got similar things. When they were first introduced, the Pokemon official website listed their Radiant Sun and Radiant Moon phases as being phases, and people thought, oh, they get forms. But it was no different than Xerneas, Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem's animations. Solgaleo and Lunala only glow like that when they use their respective signature moves, Sunsteel Strike and Moongeist Beam. It's just an animation. They don't glow like that any other time. You can see it in the cutscenes when they open the Ultra Wormhole to go save Lusamine from Ultra Space and Sun and Moon. It's just an animation. It doesn't really count as a real form. And finally, last but not least, we have Marshadow. Marshadow glows green whenever it's attacking, so it is, again, just an animation. However, based on toy company producers, companies that produce toys, somewhere on the labels they revealed that regular Marshadow is called the Gloom Dweller Pokemon, which is its category in the Pokedex. However, whenever it glows green, which is when it's excited and attacking, it is known as its Zenith stage, or Zenith form, as opposed to Gloom Dweller, with Zenith being a word that means peak, which I guess means that Zenith is its peak energy. But of course, it's not a real form, it's just an animation, and of course, it is the only way to tell the difference between a regular and a shiny Marshadow, because its green fire is actually a different color if it's shiny, but unless it attacks and the animation activates, then Marshadow and shiny Marshadow look identical. So again, this is not a real form, it's just a battle animation, and unfortunately I regret to inform that when I was planning this video, at some point I completely forgot to mention totem Pokemon. So certain Pokemon, like Gumshoos, Raticate, Togedemaru, etc., have totem forms which make them huge, much bigger. I should have included them, but I completely forgot about them since they are so recent and I've been planning this video a long time now. And it completely slipped my mind, so I'm sorry to not include Totem Pokemon, but I mentioned them now that I remembered, so yeah. Some Pokemon like Araquanid, Gumshoos, Lurantis, Raticate, Togedemaru, Mimikyu, Marowak, Alolan Marowak of course, have totem forms which make them huge, and you get them in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon only, and that's that. Anyway, so if I had to categorize totem forms, they'd of course be under permanent. If I had to make a theory video on what totem form Pokemon are, obviously they are Pokemon that have been accumulating ultra wormhole radiation for years, and that makes them grow big, so they're technically mutated. That ultra energy is the same aura around Ultra Beasts, and it's also the same aura that manifested Z crystals in the Alola region and power up Z moves. And my point is that totem Pokemon are just mutant giant Pokemon, but in the game they're permanent because you cannot ever change any Pokemon between regular size and totem size under legitimate means. So yeah, I guess totem Pokemon would be right there next to shiny and gender differences. Of course, whether they're legitimate forms or not is up to debate, but I think they are legitimate forms. Anyway, that's all the time I have for today. Thanks for watching if you watched. Please like and subscribe if you liked. Please share with a friend if you really liked. And I'll see you guys next time. And please watch my other videos. I'd appreciate it.